Right, so it's been probably around about 2 weeks at the time of recording since I last put up a video on the channel, so I apologise. For those of you who don't know, I put up a poll on my community tab on YouTube a week ago saying, what do people want to do? And this is video 250, by the way, which is incredible. What do people want to see? And I had three options. I had another Q&A, best and worst Sunderland games, obviously that I've been at physically in the flesh, and best and worst SCFC 11s. Now, best and worst SCFC 11 won, but I've decided to cheat a little bit here because it only won by about 2%. So my thought was going to be, I'll do best and worst Sunderland games on this channel and do best and worst SCFC 11 for SCFC Fan TV, assuming we can get it uploaded. If not, then I might put a separate video on here in the week to come or days to come. The reason for that is because I looked back at my Q&A from a few months ago when I got 1,000 subs, which, by the way, quickly, thank you for the support, because I've now somehow reached 1,350 subscribers, round about that mark anyway. It's absolutely incredible and astonishing that I still keep getting the sub count going up and up and up, which is mental. So thanks again, guys, means the world. But I also realised on there that I did put my best and worst SCFC 11, and I think my opinion hasn't really changed that much. But nevertheless, I've rambled on enough, so I'm going to get to the main video as of right now. So, best and worst, I'm going to do 5 of each, 5 best SCFC games that I've been at, so that this, just to clarify, is the rule. That means it can't be games I've watched on the TV. I've got to have physically been inside the stadium to watch the match. So, let's get started. Right, so I'm going to try and go for the 5 worst first, just to get the miserable ones out of the way. It was a tough one to pick because I've actually had my fair share of garbage. I've had my fair share of awfulness to have to witness in the ground, and it was incredibly difficult to have to choose. But I think I've managed to pick my top 5 worst. So, without further ado, here goes nothing. I very quickly hope you are all staying safe because of the coronavirus. It's a very serious thing. The country's recently on lockdown. So, yeah, make sure if you can, stay safe and stay in the house if you're able to. So, now, 2.5 minutes, I haven't even got the list yet. Number 5, Charlton 2, Sunderland 1 in the playoff final. I know you're thinking, what, this is probably 5th? What? I think because of the fact it was at Wembley and I went with mates, it kind of lowered it a bit on the list. But it has to be on there purely for the way that the game finished. Losing in the dying seconds of the game was just awful. It was heartbreaking, and especially when I had a 6.5-hour journey, in fact probably 7-hour journey to be honest, back to the northeast to factor into that, and it took about an hour or so to get out of London because the traffic was so heavy. So I hated the journey back then. Thankfully I was able to take the mick out with the lads on the coach on the way back, so at least it made it a bit easier in context, but I still didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy the whole Wembley experience that day. There was nothing about that game whatsoever that I actually enjoyed at all. It was ridiculous, and yeah. So maybe that's one good thing about the fixtures being postponed and possibly cancelled. I don't have to go to Wembley this year. But yeah, that's up there, definitely. Right, number 4. Sunderland 0, Aston Villa 4. I remember this, because obviously I was a season card holder back then. This was Gus Poyet's last game, so this is the only game that's one of 2 games that are in the Premier League era. Yeah. Villa had scored something like 4 or 5 goals away from home that season, and this was in mid-March this happened, by the way. And we let them double their tally in one game. Absolutely disgraceful for the shirt. And it was the game that lost Poyet his job. And it's a shame, really, because I think Poyet towards the end did seem to lose the plot a little bit. But I did quite like Poyet, actually. I think he's my second favourite Sunderland manager. Bearing in mind, I only got into football since 2011. So, that's why most of these lists are going to be within the last 9 years or so. And it's a shame for him, but, what more to say about it? We drew 0-0 second half. So that's a positive. Moving on to number 3. Now, this is one from this season, actually. So, yeah, well done. This one was so awful that it's managed to make its way onto the list. Number 3. Bristol Rovers 2, Sunderland 0. From a couple of weeks back. What can I say about this game? There was just lack of heart, passion. Well, maybe passion's the wrong word. There was a lack of fight, intensity, and yeah, I think there was a lack of work rate from some of the players. I know I resort to that almost every time we don't win a game, but like really, for anyone that went down to Bristol Rovers and actually had to witness it, I'm pretty sure a lot of them would say it's at least something remotely similar. There was no fight at all, and we just allowed Bristol Rovers. And bear in mind, they had won one in that win in their last 18, and that was against a 10-man Blackpool side. And again, that's not Bristol Rovers' problem by all means. They're more than happy to enjoy the win, so they should. They shouldn't not enjoy it just because we didn't think that the players did enough. But for me, I just thought that if you wanted to get in the top two, that's a team you should be beating. No excuses, really. But even then, the season might end up being cancelled, so maybe that result will be null and void, to be honest. But yeah, it was just horrendous. The coach journey down was actually all right, so I went with a friend from work, but the journey back wasn't as bad as I thought, but the performance was just god-awful. Really was. Number 2, Burnley 4, Sunderland 1 in the Premier League. What can I say about this game? 4-0 down to Burnley, and then we finally started to turn up and actually start trying. It was ridiculous, man. It was utterly ridiculous, and I'm just thinking, we're making Burnley look like Barcelona here. Really? Again, Burnley had a very good home record, so it's not a surprise that we got beat. It was just the manner and the fashion and the margin in which we got beat that really annoyed me. It just set the tone for that season when we just went down under Moyes without any heart and fight and effort and whatnot. So, yeah, nothing much more to say other than that one. And number 1, and I still to this day I think I'm not going to have a game that's going to top this one, Barnsley 3, Sunderland 0. I know there's a couple of commenters saying rubbish like, oh, he has a dig at Barnsley. I'm like, well, I expect Sunderland to be higher in the football pyramid than Barnsley, but as it stands, of course, it's not the case. That was just horrendous that day. And, I'm having white nightmares flashing back to that. And really, as far as the championship season, I know this season's been pretty dreadful in some respects, but that season, I think it's just the fact that it encompassed and, summarised and symbolised the championship season. It was just... Getting relegated from the Premier League was bad enough. We somehow managed to top it and make it even worse the next season. I couldn't believe it. And I remember I think we started fairly well that game, but then once we went 1-0 down, heads just dropped and the effort levels just dropped considerably. And I still to this day maintain if we had the heart rate and passion and work rate that Barnsley had that day, we would have won that game. But we didn't, and likewise Barnsley won it, so fair play to them. Right, let's get on to the good ones. This one was kind of harder to do because obviously there's not as many options, but I had to think, right, which ones really left a big impact upon me? And it's hard in some senses because doing the rubbish ones is kind of easy and it's actually more fun to do because you get to go back and reminisce about the bad times, so to speak. But there isn't much more to say other than that one, and it's just, yeah. So anyway, top 5 best. I've done rambling enough again. Number 5, Gillingham 1, Sunderland 4. That was quality, and bearing in mind this was still in the early days of the Donald Methvin era, who, and on a whole, I still don't think have done a bad job for us, but that's a different debate for another time. That one was great. It was great going to Gillingham and just getting a resounding victory. And bear in mind, Gillingham had actually started pretty well at the start of last season. I think they got something like 5 points and were unbeaten themselves going into the game. And we went 1-0 down, actually, and this is what I expect from a Sunderland team. When they go 1-0 down, to have the fight, heart and passion to get back into the game and got in front. I didn't expect to win 4-1, but I did think, right, come on, let's get 3 points here. We should be able to. Quality, a couple of quality goals in there. I think that Honeyman's and Powers and whatnot, great goals. And overall, it was just a great night. Now, although it did take quite a while to get back to the northeast, oh boy, was the journey worth it. It really was worth it. I went with Pete and Ben, who both of you've seen them a few times in my videos, not for a while, but you've seen them. Really enjoyed it. Go back and look at the video on the channel. I think it was quality night. We went through the streets of Kent amidst the chants of Sunderland. It was great. Loved it. But that's only number 5 on the list, but it was still a great day. Number 4, Sunderland 1, Man City 0. Now, this was the one when G scored the offside winner, which was offside. It was clearly offside. But that was the only one of the 4-4-0s I was at. The first one, I wasn't into football when Ben scored the penalty. And the second 2, I was in Manchester seeing my family members then. So, I think I was. Yeah, I was. So this is the only one I was being at. But I remember this was the first season I properly got into football, and I still didn't know much about all the players that everybody had at that point. I'd like to think I know a bit better now, but compared to a lot of fans, I don't really know much. Saying that though, when we got a nil, going into the dying embers of the game, when we were still 0-0, I thought if we get 0-0, quality result, and then for us to get a winner in the last minute was absolute bedlam from Sunderland fans. I loved it. It was great, and I'm never going to forget that moment. But again, it is number 4 on the list, and I think it's the only one. No, it's one of 2 from the Premier League era. But there you have it. I think in general, it's the second best home game I can remember. Well, it's certainly the best home game in terms of the result I can remember. But in terms of my personal what it left for me, it's number 2. So that one's to come later on. Number 3. Burton Albion 0, Sunderland 2. Now, a couple of years ago, this probably would have been top, or it certainly would have been top 2. But a couple of games have since eclipsed it. Bearing in mind, this was during the Championship. It's one of the only few days in the Championship season that was actually really memorable for me, for the right reasons, by the way. I remember going with Pete to that game, and I think between us, we travelled something like to 8 or 9 league games and still hadn't seen a win. I'd seen us beat Borough in the Cup under Martin O'Neill, but I hadn't seen us win in the league. And to go to Burton where you thought, right, come on, if we don't win here, then there's something seriously wrong. And to get 2 late goals as well, what can I say? It was just memorable. And I think it's because it was my first away win in the league. It was something to finally savour. Really enjoyed it. The journey back was quality. And yeah, unfortunately though, the season ended in tragedy tragedy in football sense anyway. Just, yeah. Number 2, Rochdale 1, Sunderland 2. Now, I do remember this one. I remember it was last year when we went to Rochdale, and we came from behind and won 2-1, and Honeyman scored in the last minute. This was last season's game. Now, I remember travelling there, but I was in Manchester seeing family again, but I was travelling by Metrolink to the game, which thankfully I was able to travel to Rochdale and then go through the Rochdale town centre, or city centre. My geography, right, you use knowledge on that's useless. But it wasn't so much the result, it was a bright sunny day. That was actually a factor in it, believe it or not. I'm one of those sad souls that lets weather impact their mood. But that was great, coming out of Rochdale then, and not to mention the table that we were at, where we were level on points with Barnsley with 2 games in hand. And that was one of the things that really we should have finished top 2 from that position. There was no excuse not to have done, really. But I loved that result, and I came back absolutely buzzing and thought, right, come on, it's on here. But you know what happened in the end, so there you go. And number 1, because I've made this video long enough, Sunderland 3, Everton 0. Now, is this the best game? No, but it's the best in terms of how it left us feeling, because I'm not going to pretend relegating Newcastle wasn't a part of it, because it was a big part of it, because, and they would say the same, rightly say the same the other way around. They're loving it right now, fair enough. But as of now, if you had a chance, it's a chance of relegating your rivals. But more importantly, it was a chance then to kick on and finally start punching at our weight in the Premier League. Because I still maintain, in the years, 3 or 4 years prior to that, we were really underperforming as a football club. We should have been doing better than we were. I thought with Sam Allardyce and with the team we had, we finally had the chance to do that. Now, obviously, we know what happened since, so of course it had to go the other way. We couldn't just have it all our way, could we? But that was a really special night, because I thought something was finally going to start building the next season. There was with the promise of the future. That was what left us with, and it left us with a sense of hope. Even though we'd only just finished 17th, and I still said on paper that's still not good enough, I did think that there was something more to come in a good sense from that, but obviously it didn't happen. So that's it, guys. That's my best and worst games. I'm going to try and do the best and worst 11, as I said, on the SFC Fan TV channel, if we can get it uploaded. If not, I'll probably end up doing it on here just to try and keep content ticking over. Thanks again for those who are voting in the poll. I know 140 odd votes isn't really much in the grand scheme of things, but it seems that at least a couple of people are interested in this, and obviously I want to try and keep the content ticking over if I can. I love you and leave yous. Thank you once again for the support, and I really do appreciate it. And stay safe. More importantly, stay safe. Times like this, it's important.